I'm Jake Walsh. I am the Research and Grants Coordinator in the Aquatic Invasive Species Program at the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. And so as the Research and Grants Coordinator, I have two primary responsibilities in my job. One is, as the title would imply, coordinating the research that we need done to remove barriers in our day-to-day work in managing aquatic invasive species in the state. And so that involves a lot of work with gathering our data, and trying to learn from our data so we can get better at what we do at the DNR. But then also building partnerships with groups like the University of Minnesota, the Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center, and other universities in the state, and also outside the state, to just make sure that we are making data-driven decisions and learning from the work we do and through our data. The other part of my job is managing one of our grant programs where I manage our aquatic invasive species control grants. And so those are pretty small pots of money that we have designed for helping lakes, or like lake associations, treat invasive aquatic plant populations in their lakes. So I'm sure you've seen lakes here in the cities that are overrun by Eurasian water milfoil or curly-leaf pondweed. Those grants go to helping control some of those populations and trying to get native plant communities growing back in those water bodies. Depending on what I'm working on at any given point in time, my day-to-day can change quite a bit. That's actually something that I really like about my job is throughout the year, I'll be working on grant-related stuff where I'm working directly with public citizens who are part of lake associations or cities or counties. And I really enjoy that work. I enjoy helping them solve those problems and providing that support for solving those problems. But then there are other parts of the year where everything I focus on is gathering data and analyzing data, or like helping our program come up with an idea of what they want to learn, and then the research we want to get done to sort of address some of the challenges that we work with on a day-to-day basis. And so, so it's sort of, it changes depending on the time of year, but that's one of the things I really like about the job, is it's not the same thing day in, day out. Having a seat at the table to make decisions, where it's, my background is in research. It's in aquatic invasive species research, and I grew up in Minnesota. And so to be in this position where I am taking what I learned through school and applying it to actually solving problems in my home state is sort of like, it's like a dream come true, where it's this huge honor to be a part of protecting and conserving and improving our lakes and our water bodies here in the state by addressing invasive species. And so just being a part of those decisions and seeing all the work that goes on across the state with aquatic invasive species and being in a position where I can help with that has been fantastic. And then other favorite parts, I love, like I mentioned, I love being able to help people. I like working really directly with stakeholders. That's something that I didn't get as much when I was doing research at universities and stuff like that. And so it's nice to be back in sort of a service role in that way. But then, of course, I spent the last 10 years doing research, and so getting back with the data it's always fun. I love to just sit and learn from a data set and get really into the data for hours at a time or days at a time sometimes. Yeah, so those are things I really love. There are some challenges inherent to just working in government where we are very careful to do things well and to do things carefully and above board, and that can sometimes lead to things being a little bit slower than I'd like. But honestly, that's also part of me. I'm new to the DNR. I started in May, and so part of that is just me learning how those processes work. And I think they work extremely well for doing things the right way. And for me, it's just a matter of learning how to use them efficiently. But I think that's one of the challenges I've run into is there is a right way to do things in government, and learning how can be a little bit of a slow process. There's also perceptions that come with DNR, public perceptions, where DNR is often the people that are out there managing how many fish people pull out of lakes, or managing boats that pull invasive species out of lakes, or like have weeds on their motor or something like that. And so there's sometimes this adversarial perception with rarely, it doesn't come up a lot, but that can be a challenge too, where you see so much of what the DNR does to help the public, and then to have a few cases where people don't see it that way can be difficult. But I would say that is a very rare exception. Out of high school, I was really into biology. I was really into that whole area. I originally started in undergrad at Hamline University in St. Paul, and I was into pre-med. I really wanted to get into psychiatry in particular. I ended up volunteering at a hospital, and I absolutely hated being in a hospital for work, and it was not a good fit. And I think at the time I just didn't know how many options are available for working in biology, and I didn't even realize that sort of my love of the outdoors and of lakes could be a job. And so what ended up happening is I got in touch with a professor at Hamline who was looking for somebody to help him out with his research over the summer, which was doing aquatic invasive species work in lakes up north in Minnesota. And from there, I sort of got locked into that path of doing research in lakes. And so I turned that into a summer research project, sort of like an internship at Hamline. And then that set me up really nicely for grad school. And so I went straight from Hamline to grad school at University of Wisconsin-Madison at the Center for Limnology there. And so that's where I worked on my PhD. And then from there, after sort of getting through that process, I did 2 different postdocs, which is just research positions you do after grad school. They're often for training to keep sort of developing skills to get a job as a PhD level graduate. And so I did one of those in Madison and one of those here at the University of Minnesota. And then from there, I ended up at the Department of Natural Resources. Like a lot of people, I just enjoy being outside. I enjoy being in and around nature. I even as a kid, I spent most of my time playing around a pond in our neighborhood, catching frogs, stuff like that. And a lot of our trips, because I have a lot of family in northern Minnesota, and so a lot of our trips were to Lake Superior. And Lake Superior just solidified in me like a love of lakes, and sort of learning about the lake, learning about Lake Superior and sort of just all the things that go on it and how vast it is. Like that sort of got me hooked. Because I always enjoy being in nature and playing around water. But anytime I think back to why I do what I do, Lake Superior comes into mind. Just being close to that and having family up there. I think my grandma was a big part of that as well. And then of course through that, my mom and my dad as well. So she's a tribal member on Fond du Lac Reservation up in Cloquet, or up near Cloquet. And so water is a big deal for my family. It's something that we seek out in our vacations or our trips. We've always tried to live close to water. I grew up near the Mississippi, and so I growing up, I didn't even realize that you could make a career out of something that was such a big part of my childhood. And it's like a lot of people who get into environmental studies, they're birders or they're fisher or they're anglers. And for me, it was always just being around water and being around forests and stuff like that. And and then when I realized you could make a career out of helping conserve those things, that was sort of locked in at that point. And I'm sure this is cliched, but it's just getting experience, trying to find an internship, trying to find an opportunity to just try stuff out, whether that's through research or through working for a nonprofit or something like that. But getting that experience outside of your normal coursework, I think, is really valuable for the job market, but also just for learning what you like. Like for me, I learned I definitely don't want to work in a hospital. At the time where I thought sort of if you like science, what you do is you go on to do med school. But then I learned through not wanting to do that there are things that I love doing that are related to science and biology. So that'd probably be one of my big pieces of advice. The other one is to not let the things that you're inexperienced with, or that you're maybe afraid of doing, get in the way of sort of advancing the direction you want to go. I think there were a lot of things that it just freaked me out about like trying to pursue a career, or as like public speaking or statistics or like something like that, where there are things that were definitely big roadblocks for me, and I wish I would have been less afraid of them, because it's just a matter of doing it and practicing and learning how to get better, and then getting over those things. And so, yeah, I would say for like very practical experiences, getting that hands-on experience in an internship or some sort of job. But then in terms of just thinking a little more conceptually, is just don't be afraid to try things, and don't be afraid to work on things that might freak you out a little bit, because that's just, everybody's in that boat.